Hello and welcome to Beach View, our podcast about different things and/or stuff.
Hello, welcome. So, today we're going to be covering another one of our musical topics, which we do often. Although not like terribly often, but it's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Taking Back Sunday because I've been getting into them recently, and you listened to Taking Back Sunday, so thought it'd be neat to do an overview of an artist.
Yeah.
Instead of just an album.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think I'm not sure if I talked about this on the podcast before, but I used to listen to Taking Back Sunday. I feel like it was in the mid 2000s.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like 06, 07, that kind of around that time frame is when I really got into Taking Back Sunday. And funny enough, I never thought of them as emo, but I often hear them described now as emo.
Oh, they're definitely, especially their first two albums are definitely
yeah
emo.
They are, but at the time, I never thought oh, this is emo. I don't know why, it just never resonated with me, but now I look back and I'm yeah, I definitely see that, but at the time I didn't think that it was. But it's just funny how your perspective, or I guess how people describe things, and when you look back several years ago, you're yeah, it definitely fit into that. But
yeah.
This was, my whole catchphrase, this was a whole vibe back in the 06-ish time frame for me. I just have fond memories of listening to Taking Back Sunday. So when did you come to Taking Back Sunday?
So I've been familiar with them, vaguely for a while. Just because, Cute Without the E cut from the team is, a popular song, has been, pretty consistently since it came out.
Yeah.
And, actually, you putting it on one of our mixtapes, Liar, It Takes One to Know One.
That's right.
And I started listening to that, and from there, I started listening to the album that was on, and from there, started listening to some of their other albums. So
yes, I have unfortunately not listened to their later albums. I don't think
I haven't either.
Yeah, so hey, maybe we could do a podcast on that. but I know they came out with one. I want to say maybe 2016-ish. 2018, yeah. I don't know, around that time. And I never listened to it. And I remember thinking I need to go listen to that, and I just completely forgot about it. So but I have gone back to this band on and off for the past several years. Obviously, it's been several years. And they're just, I love listening to them. I think they're a great band. I just like the whole mood of it. And I like to hear all their different stuff that they've done through the years. So, how did you feel about it? So you just listened to Louder Now, right?
I started with Louder Now, yes.
Okay.
Which is their third album. It came out in 2006.
Yeah, see? I have my time frame right. 2006. Yeah. Yeah, so how did you feel about it?
Yeah, so, well, at first I just kind of started listening to singles, which, I don't know. I feel like Make Damn Sure and 2020 Surgery are the weaker singles on that album.
Yeah.
And Liar, It Takes One to Know One is just way better. So I was kind of comparing it to them, and I was I don't know how I feel about this one. But then I eventually ended up going back to it, and I was oh yeah, there's a lot on here I actually like.
Yeah, I think I like every song on that album. But I agree. I think 2020 Surgery was the weaker single for sure. To me, that was the weaker one. And I like Make Damn Sure.
I do too, but yeah, I like Liar better.
Yeah, Liar definitely better. I agree with you there. And I just want to point out that it is kind of rare that you and I really like the same songs. So I feel we're bonding.
It's not that rare. It's just we have some points where we radically disagree. But there's plenty of songs where we're both yeah, like this song.
That's true. Okay. Well, I'm really glad that you went back and listened to it. And now I really want to go back and listen to that album and the later ones because I never did like delve into those. So that's definitely on my list. I always have like homework after these podcasts that that I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like I want to go do this. And then sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. So I got to make sure I go do that.
Make damn sure.
Yeah, I got to make damn sure I do that. Good one. Yes. But I just I love the sound of it. I think that I like the videos. I know you're not into videos.
No, I've never even watched them. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean it's been quite a while since I've seen the videos, but I just remember, I always like videos. There's hardly any videos that I don't like, I guess I should say. But I have always wanted to see them in concert, and I haven't. So I feel like they need to do a tour so I can go see them.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this album. I like alt rock from this era, and I like their particular like blend of emo with that 2000s alt rock that I think really sets it apart. And also, I think is really strong lyrically. There's a lot of moments on these tracks where I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a really good like turn of phrase, or that's a really good melody to go over this line, or stuff like that.
I completely agree with that. And I think that's why it resonated with me so much. That I just think, and my thing with music is I always say it's so relatable. So I know I feel like I repeat myself every time I'm like, praising any kind of music, but that's how I feel. So I definitely agree with you on that one. I think it has more substance to me than some other songs that you would compare to these like in the genre, and that's what I like. I like the complexity, and even though this is not like an album review or anything like that, but in general for Taking Back Sunday, I like the complexity of the music with the lyrics, and just I think it's just sounds really good. And they did become like super popular. Like they were on like the top 100 a few times, I think, probably like the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think so.
If I have that right, yeah. And I know like Make Damn Sure was like a very strong single. I remember that at the time. So like it performed well, in other words. So
yeah.
I think that's awesome. And I can't believe, like looking back, like I haven't listened to their later albums. Like Louder Now is the one that resonates most with me because I used to listen to it a lot. So I definitely, I feel like I did not do them justice by like skipping their their later albums. It's terrible.
Yeah, and also, I have to say, if I had a nickel for every time a like emo, like rock sort of band referenced my favorite things from The Sound of Music, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird to think that it's happened twice.
Okay, wait. So which song is it?
So Divine Intervention on this has like one of the lines is, "These are a few of my favorite things," in sort of the melody of the song from The Sound of Music.
Oh gosh.
And then there's also a Panic at the Disco song that references it.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, like I said, it's been a while since I listened, but that's pretty cool.
I just thought that was interesting that there were 2 in like right in the same time period there. I mean, there's probably more, I just don't know about them.
I feel like there has to be more. Oh wait. Stop the presses. I see that there's upcoming tour dates. Oh my gosh.
I think they did like a 20th anniversary for their first album.
Stop it. Okay, so apparently in July they're going to be in Florida and Georgia and Virginia. Oh my gosh. I guess I'm going to have to take a road trip. That would be so fun. Yeah, I had no idea. Okay, so there you go. It's still relevant today.
Yeah, which, speaking of, because it was the 20th anniversary of their first album last year, which I think at this point is considered like an emo classic.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
which is Tell All Your Friends, the 2002 album. That's the one with Cute Without the E.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you think of this album?
I like that album. I'm terrible at like remembering songs, but I definitely remember Cute Without the E. Like that
Yes.
was on point for its time, like very popular. You know, I think it's really funny that like some of these songs like 20 years later, you're still like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." I don't know why that's funny because everybody does that with music,
Yeah.
but to me it's just like how do like I not remember what happened like 2 weeks ago, but I remember like the song from 20 years ago. But that's the beauty of music. It like resonates with you and
Yep.
stays with you. But yeah, I like that album. My favorite, of course, was Louder Now. But I remember the album right before that and remember liking it as well.
Yeah.
I really should have like listened to these before today just to refresh myself, but you know.
Well, I mean, it's pretty like typical. It's kind of like it's got a bit of a rougher sound, but it's like pretty typical emo of like the
Yes.
2000s, like early 2000s.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you know that they had a single last year?
Yeah, I saw that in their Wikipedia page, but I haven't listened to it.
Oh, I didn't see it on Wikipedia, but I just like I was Googling Taking Back Sunday and I saw that they had one last year and I'm like, I am so like late to the game. Like I don't know how people like hear about these things because it was not on my radar whatsoever. So, I feel like I need to be more in tune with like music news because I mean, obviously I'm into music, which I feel like everybody is, but but I did not know that. So I definitely am putting that on my list as well. So I like that they're still making music. Like that pumps me up.
Yeah. So, yeah, I liked their second album when I listened to it, which is Where You Want to Be. It's 2004. It's more emo stuff, really more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing, so I listened to a few of the songs past Louder Now, and their one album, which was their 2009 album New Again, which is the one they did right after Louder Now. And yeah, I didn't really like it, which was interesting.
Yeah, I remember hearing some of the newer stuff after Louder Now and thinking like, it's not my favorite. So I guess that's why I didn't pursue those albums. But it's always hard when a band evolves, and sometimes it's great, and sometimes you just don't get it. But I think all the music from around like from 2002 to 2006, just like in general, to me that was like a fun time for music because you had so many different like things that were really hot at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about like you had like Britney Spears kind of songs, and then you had like emo, and then you had like some alt rock, and you had like obviously rap, hip hop. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I love the whole spectrum of music from that time. And then kind of getting out of that into their later albums, I just was kind of like, nah, just a few things that I've heard. Again, I've never listened to the whole albums.
Yeah, well, they also got way less popular after Louder Now, so.
Yeah, I always wonder how that is. Like, just in general with bands, like they're super popular, then it's like womp womp womp.
Yeah, and, like, one of the things I think especially for that is, like, all of their, newer stuff is pretty straightforwardly rock. It's not like alt rock or emo stuff. It's more like, I don't know, it's got some, I don't know what to call it other than, like, rock without, like, an adjective attached to it. I'm sure there's, like, terms for it, but,
Yeah.
strange, that, and I think, like, you mentioned them evolving their sound, but I think it's an interesting direction to go because of the fact that most artists around this time that were popular, especially in the like emo and pop punk and alt rock genres, started getting more poppy during this era. And it's
Yes.
interesting to see Taking Back Sunday, who's definitely in that fold. Instead of going poppier, they like decide to go more straightforwardly rock.
Yeah, that is very interesting. You pointed that out. So I think like there was a period where like emo kind of started getting some like backlash, I think, like as far as popularity.
Yeah.
It's like people kind of started, I don't know if they're like making fun of it, I guess you would
Yeah,
say.
no, that was part of it.
Yeah, like, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a bunch of crybabies." Like, you always hear like
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. And so I feel like that maybe kind of discouraged some bands from continuing that sound, or maybe it was just they're ready to evolve, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think it's kind of weird because, like, in some ways, like you said, some bands kind of got more pop sounding.
Well, most, I think. Most of the popular
Yeah,
ones.
most. Yeah, and then some, like Taking Back Sunday, kind of went the opposite way and doing more like rock, as you said.
Hmm.
And a lot of people just didn't want it. Like, I feel like the bands that started getting more poppy, like obviously you're trying to cater to a wider audience, right?
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
ones that went more full rock, like, kind of fizzled out more because there just wasn't a market for that, I guess, at the time. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I mean, obviously, that's how it goes.
Yeah, which, because when I first listened to, New Again, it was just, like, really strange to me. And I started thinking about, like, yeah, that's a weird direction because, like, basically all rock subgenres that were popular, like, I mean, I'm sure not all of the artists in them, but the subgenres as a whole started pushing towards poppier directions. Like, rock in general got poppier, like, towards the turn of the 2000s to the 2010s. And
Yes.
it also started like fading out of public consciousness, like it stopped being a mainstream as much.
Yeah, and like rock used to be, I mean, there were whole radio stations dedicated to rock that
I
were
mean, there
super
still
popular.
are. They're just not
Yeah,
like.
there's feel like they're not as popular, but you had rock, and it's gone through different phases through the years, like the 80s, like hair bands that
Yeah,
were
yeah.
rock, even before that, like the 70s, like rock bands.
Right. And those were all like full of big celebrities who were like household names.
Yes,
And now
yes.
most of your big like musicians aren't like there's hardly any like rock people in it.
Yes, exactly. And so it's definitely took a downturn, which I think is really interesting,
Yeah, yeah.
because you wouldn't think that. Like, you'd feel like you have
Right.
some,
Been popular for decades, why would
yes,
it just
yeah,
disappear?
like what happened there. And so that's a really interesting topic, I feel like, because, I've read about some of it being like, some of the factors being like, as bands got more into pop, and as bands started kind of utilizing more technology, like, have you read about that kind of thing where like the introduction of more technology in music has kind of like led to some of the downturn of like rock as we knew it?
Yeah, I've read a little bit. I mean, like I'm sure there are like some definitive answers for this that I don't like know because I haven't read enough about it. But I've read that like the technology thing, and I think the like push to like iTunes and streaming also hurt it.
Oh yeah, definitely. The way we consume music, which we've talked about a lot,
Mm-hmm.
that definitely has hurt it. But going back to the technology piece as far as making music, so rock has always tended to be like authentic sounds. So, like you have a
Live
rock
instruments and
band.
stuff, and yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the introduction of like technology into music, like synth sounds and like, that kind of thing, kind of wasn't a great thing for rock bands, you know what I mean? Because they're authentic rock, like they're authentic sounds. Not that, you know what I'm trying to say, but not that it's a bad thing, but that kind of, as we got more into artists using technology for their bands, so to speak, like the need for a big rock band has kind of slowly decreased. So I think that's really interesting. And then to your point, the technology and like streaming and how we consume music, that's another great point about like what could have caused, the downturn of popularity for rock.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want, like you were getting into the, like, authentic thing, I do want to, like, raise that point, because especially in, like, the 2000s, there was this, like, whole big thing where, like, you had angry rock fans who were like, oh, all this, like, electronic stuff's not real music or whatever.
Yes.
And not to say, like, oh, rock, faded from the charts and now music's not good anymore. It's just an interesting thing to think about, I like rock music, but I also like some electronic stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, I love electronic stuff, and that's, one of the things I also read about was, like, access for musicians. Like, if you're a musician that's trying to make it, you have a lot more access with technology or, like, electronic sounds, like that kind of stuff.
Well, especially as, it started getting more affordable, and
yes,
like,
exactly.
You could start doing it on a laptop. Like, you could make, like, one person could make a whole, like, career off of just making music on their laptop, and you don't need all these instruments and amps and like, people to play the instruments and all that.
Yeah, and like we've seen that through the years, like with producers. I mean, we've seen it in every genre of music. Like, I'm especially thinking like rap and hip hop, like where you had these producers making these beats, right? Like for years. But the thing about in the mid 2000s or 2010s ish, like it started getting much easier for like any person, like you said, to get a laptop and start making beats. Like software's gotten way more accessible than it used to be. Like, and I know it's always been the case. But as we moved, from the heavy rock sounds into the more electronic sounds, it's way easier for musicians starting out. And what's everybody looking for all the time is like fresh music, right? Fresh sounds. And so I think that also contributed to it, like, especially like, SoundCloud and like stuff like that, where like it's way more accessible for people to put their music out there.
Right, yeah.
You're not having, I mean, I'm sure you do in a lot of instances, but it's so much easier for like a solo artist to do anything and have this like electronic, beats and stuff than it is for a whole rock band to really make it, I feel like. And maybe, I mean, I'm not a music industry expert, but I can see that logic,
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I wanted to pull up some year-end charts to sort of illustrate like what was happening here. So 2005 Billboard's year-end Hot 100, which I've actually heard some people express problems with the year-end Hot 100 charts, but like it's at least like some sort of accounting for like songs that were really popular in 2005, right? And number 7, we have Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. Number 10, Behind These Hazel Eyes by Kelly Clarkson, which is like a pop rock song. Number 12, You and Me by Lifehouse, which is like a soft rock song. Number 16 is Mr. Brightside by The Killers, which, alt rock song, huge.
Yes.
Number 20, Beverly Hills by Weezer. I don't even like that song, but it's definitely a rock song.
I mean, it sticks in your head, man. You gotta give him that.
But, I mean, there's, like, all these songs in the top 20, and there's a bunch of other songs, like, in the rest of the chart. Like, this is the year, Fall Out Boy, like, released a really popular album, so, Sugar We're Going Down was, like, big, and so, Nickelback's Photograph was this year.
Yes.
Charted this year, so there's, like, a lot of rock in the top charts, and then we look at, 2012, just to pick like a random year, which actually has some like rock influenced stuff. Somebody That I Used to Know by Goat-Ye, I don't know how to pronounce that.
I don't either.
But because that's like, I wouldn't call that a rock song, but it's definitely like alternative. It's got like indie, it's like there is a lineage from rock to here. And then there's several fun songs. We Are Young.
Yes.
What was the other one? Some Nights. Which they're like pop, but they're doing like kind of a Queen sort of thing.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah,
like they're definitely heavily influenced by Queen, so that's kind of rocky.
Yeah, I feel like it's rocky, yeah.
And then, going down, Everybody Talks by Neon Trees is at 22, which is a pop rock song.
Okay.
So that's like 3 songs outside, like one of them's outside the top 20. Party Rock Anthem is on here, which despite the name is not a rock song.
Not rock. Yeah.
I just thought that. But yeah, Moves Like Jaggers on here is 36, Maroon 5, which is kind of a rock song.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, you see, just in 7 years, it's really fallen out of the charts.
Yeah.
And then you get by 2016, and then you have 21 Pilots, who's alternative, but I wouldn't call them rock necessarily.
Yeah.
They're pulling a lot from hip hop. Cake by the Ocean, which
I like that one.
Kind of a rock song, but I mean, you see there's way less rock stuff in the charts, and the stuff that is borderline. And then any Imagine Dragons song, they're the big popular bearer of rock in this era, and they're all
yes,
there's an influence there, but there's definitely a Ship of Theseus. At some point, this has changed into a different ship.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's really interesting to see the top 100s and kind of how it's kind of taken off of there. There's been so many, I guess, versions of rock, and alt rock used to be really big, and then it's not anymore. And I think it's really interesting to see on the charts how that unfolds. So definitely those mid 2000s, I guess you'd say the 2010s, right?
Yeah.
Is kind of when we see the off shift of rock from the charts, which is just, I don't know. I just think it's just so interesting to see. And, another thing that I kind of read about too was that a lot of other types of music have tended to be popular with a much wider diversity of listeners than rock would. Racially diverse or lifestyle diverse, rock tends to kind of keep the same. This is what I've read. I don't know how true this is, but
that's definitely true.
Yeah, I can see that it's, you know what I mean? I definitely am yeah, that's a good point. Rock tends to have this kind of, I don't want to say a singular base of fans, but it's not as culturally diverse as other music. I think a lot of other genres have blurred the lines between what their fan bases are, and it's resonates with a lot of different people. And I feel like that's why other genres of music have grown as well, because they're attracting way more diversity than rock traditionally has. So I thought that was an interesting argument as well. You definitely see, and the more diverse that we get as a nation or as the world, where things are more accessible to so many different people, I think that's a definitely interesting argument. Something I hadn't considered before is yeah, you're right. The rock fan base is kind of homogenous in a way, that other genres aren't.
Well, you look at the bands too, and
yes.
The majority of popular bands are all white guys.
Yes.
Not that there's never been other people, but the popular artists have been very homogenous.
Yeah, I remember even hearing about how Evanescence, at first, a female lead had a hard time kind of breaking into the scene. The label that they were on, thought that they wouldn't be successful if they didn't have a male lead as well. And that's, I think, super interesting, because you're not just talking about racially diverse, you're talking about male-led industry,
Yeah.
Which that's definitely, a good point as well.
Which isn't to say that women weren't listening.
Yeah.
It's just that women had a lot harder time being front, lead singers and parts of bands, and a lot of throughout the genre's history, I feel like.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think in that genre especially, it's been, a lot more just kind of a formula that they follow, rock bands followed, or that labels made them follow,
Yeah.
So that's definitely interesting. And then I also was reading too. I read a lot about this apparently, but I read before too that like when rock was super popular, 80s, 90s, 2000s, that the people who still listen to rock now, obviously they've aged, right?
Yeah.
So they have kids of their own and like they're still listening to this like rock stuff and like the kids don't want to listen to what their parents listen to.
Yeah.
Is what I've read, which I thought that was kind of funny because I never even like thought about that at all.
Well, one of the things with that though is I think a lot of the because I think a lot of the times those artists who like didn't want to like listen to their parents' stuff ended up listening to different rock stuff. Like Nirvana was always positioned, and like grunge in general was always positioned as like the alternative to
Yes.
like the hair metal stuff of the 80s. Like that's their cultural legacy there. Like, you switch from one subgenre of rock to another subgenre of rock.
Right.
Whereas, like, at some point in the 2000s and 2010s, it started just, like, fading out completely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. You're right, because rock was popular for several decades, so we already saw, kids not wanting to listen to what their parents listened to, but went into another subgenre. So I think that argument it's not really valid then.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I think it's very definitely interesting, and it is kind of funny now that like when I listen to music, like if I get in my car and I'm listening to music and like rock is on, I tend to change it. Like it's even kind of embedded in me. Like I'm just like, nah, I don't want to listen to rock. I don't know why. Like I guess I just, your tastes change over the years, but it's also obviously you're also influenced by what is popular too. So I don't know. It's just very crazy that just rock is not mainstream anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll ever get back into mainstream or if it's just like I think there's always a place for rock, like new rock.
Yeah.
But will it ever get back to being very popular?
Yeah, because you can find plenty of independent artists and like big artists. Like it's just like kind of in the way country's often its like own little thing and only occasionally bubbles up into something popular.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's actually less true than it like used to be than it is with rock. Like country has more mainstream appeal. I feel like these days than rock does, unless you're like like I said, Imagine Dragons and those sorts of bands. But again, those are like splitting hairs over definitions, but those are definitely different than say like Green Day, who I feel is like a comparable like band in size.
Yes.
From a few decades previous.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always there haven't been many bands that like I once was really into that I'm still super into now. Like, as their sound changes, you kind of, at least I do, I kind of lose interest, So I guess without having a lot of new mainstream rock bands, like I don't really have any that resonate with me right now. Like Imagine Dragons, for example, like I change it when when Imagine Dragons come on because I've heard them so much, and I'm just like, ready for something new,
Yeah. I mean, I just don't like Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but I do think, they're a great band. I think they have a lot of talent, but I'm just not into it. So I guess the ones that are still kind of labeled rock, I'm just like, nah, I could leave that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would love for like emo to come back really strong.
Well, there's been like kind of a revival of it in the past several years. I know people were saying that a lot of the like a lot of hip hop started pulling from I forget what the subgenre was called. But stuff like Juice World and that were pulling from emo.
And that's why I really like, Juice World. And I'm trying to think of another example, and then you remember when Machine Gun Kelly, like, made a foray into
Yes,
emo.
because you made me aware of it.
Yes, you're welcome. And everybody made fun of him, and I'm like, you know what? Let him experiment, okay?
Although I think we both weren't too high on that song you put of his on the mixtape.
No. But as an example, I think people get made fun of when they like transition to emo. But as you said, there's some influence, in hip hop of all places, which I think is awesome. So the only thing I'm not happy about is like the country being more mainstream, just because I don't like that genre.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like, let's not forget, there is a whole like kind of movement that's beginning of like country rock. So
well, country rock's been a thing for a long, long time. It's just,
I
guess
maybe
it's
it's
coming
just
back.
because it's becoming because it's becoming more mainstream in general. Maybe that's why like I've heard it more recently. Or like country rap is like a huge thing, which I mean that's kind of getting off topic, but I feel like the country subgenres are like gaining more popularity. So maybe that will transition into a rock mainstream later on. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, just an interesting thing to think about. Something I think about occasionally, certainly. That rock changed a lot over the years and fell out of the mainstream, which is just kind of strange.
Yeah. It's sad. I think we should like write an emo song about it, but
I do have an acoustic guitar.
Hey, I can have a really whiny voice, so we'll go with that. But no, and I do feel like I've said the word interesting so many times in this recording.
It's an interesting phenomenon.
That is really how I feel about it. Yeah. I really like these kinds of topics because it's stuff that I haven't thought about, and I'm just like, yeah, you're right. Like, I need to look into this. So, I don't know. I'm always a big fan of music topics.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I guess that's everything. Take us out.
All right. Well, that's been our podcast, Beach View. Thank you for listening. Join us next time.
Bye.
Bye.